Hello and welcome to the Tank Club. Today we're going to be doing a gear set review for the Turning Tide gear set. So some details about the gear set. So we've got the Turning Tide gear set. It's also known as TT sometimes, or Tide. It can be obtained from Shipwrights Regret on Veteran or Normal. It's a heavy armor set. The pieces that you need to collect for this gear set, you just want to collect the body pieces initially and then collect all the weapons and stuff afterwards, because you do want to have the versatility to be able to switch pieces around to mix with other gear sets. So if we have a look at the set piece bonuses, for the 2 items we get 1,206 maximum health. For 3 items we have 1,096 maximum stamina. For 4 items we have 1,206 maximum health again. And for the 5 items, when you block, you gain flowing water for 10 seconds, causing your next bash attack to deal magic damage to up to 6 enemies in a 5x10 meter line, and apply major vulnerability for 10 seconds, increasing their damage taken by 10%. This effect can occur once every 15 seconds. The damage scales off your max health. So let's break this down. So this set is incredibly strong. And it's strong for all situations, especially when you combine it with the Nazare monster set on boss fights. What this gear set allows you to do is it allows you to apply that major vulnerability with a base uptime of 66.66% with almost no effort as well. This is the same debuff that is obtained via the Necromancer using the Colossus Ultimate. So by using this, you now need less Necromancers using a Colossus, if any at all. So to proc this gear set, you need to block, you need to take a hit, and then you need to bash to proc the flowing water. And that's why I definitely advise that you run this gear set on both bars. You don't just want to one bar this set. Ideally, I would say put this on the body pieces and have a different set on your weapons and jewelry. That way, you can guarantee that every time you block in, you've got a chance to be proccing it. Now, obviously, there's some situations where you might want to control the proc, so you might want to one-bar it, that's fine. But for your average player, I'm going to say you want to be able to proc this on cooldown, so you're going to want to be getting hit. You're going to want to have it on both bars. You don't have to have the body pieces, but the body pieces are extremely easy to farm. So this set is so strong for dungeons, trials, and arenas, because you can activate it on basically every single ad pull. So you walk into an ad pull, you proc it, you take a hit, you proc it, you debuff the entire ad pull with major vulnerability. By the time you get to the next ad pull, it's off cooldown and you can proc it again. And then the same again for the next ad pull, and you get to the boss and it's the same again. It's just incredibly strong, because if you were in a dungeon, you would never have major vulnerability on every ad pull and on a boss fight with a 66% uptime. You might have 1 necro in a dungeon group. In arenas like Black Rose Prison, you're going to be able to proc it on every single ad pull. And this is something you wasn't able to do before if you were just relying on the Necro Ultimate. What that now means as well is your Necromancer, if you do have one in your group, they can use something else instead of a Colossus, because you're already getting the bonus that you would get from that. So the major vulnerability is just fantastic to have on every single situation. Now, you can maintain an uptime of 66.66%. So when it comes to a boss fight, it's very good to have somebody, either yourself or somebody in your group, using the Nazare monster set, because if you combine Turning Tide with Nazare, you can get virtually 100% major vulnerability uptime if you time it properly and if you can generate ultimate fast enough. Turning Tide, for me, is a pretty essential set for all situations, either on one tank or another, because it's just so easy to maintain. Now, it's also very good for kind of newer groups, because in a newer group you might have no necros or very few necros, so this is going to increase DPS by a huge amount, because you might be in a group that's never really had any necros, and now all of a sudden you can get 66% major vulnerability. You have got to be careful where you are using it, because there can be situations like Asylum Sanctorium, for example, where the boss doesn't hit you for 20-30 seconds, and then all of a sudden you've got no uptime. So obviously the boss in there gets beamed and protected, and the protectors prevent you from doing damage. And then you might have your Turning Tide off cooldown at that phase, then the boss might go into mechanics while it is no longer invulnerable. So in the damage phase on St. Olms, you might not actually be able to proc your turn inside because it might be off cooldown and then the boss isn't hitting you. So there are situations where it can be really, really difficult. Like I said before, this one's easy and fast to farm because you can just use the heavy armor body pieces. If you want to get the huge uptimes, you need to be able to build ultimate fast. You need to combine it with Nazare. You need to be saving ult and using your Warhorn on as high of an ultimate as possible to combine it with Nazare to get your turn inside uptime really, really high. But overall, this is just fantastic in all content, in all situations, and it's a vital set to pick up. So if we have a look at some strengths and weaknesses. So the strengths of this set is huge group DPS benefit. It means your Necromancer damage dealers can use other ultimates. It's guaranteed to be available for every ad pull, and then it's available on bosses, and there's no reliance on building ult fast for maintaining turn in tide. It's got a 66% base uptime if procced on cooldown, but combined with Nazare and potentially one Colossus ultimate, you can get 100% major vulnerability thanks to this gear set. It's amazing for beginner groups with little to no necromancers, and it's fast and easy to farm since you can use the heavy armor body pieces. Now the weaknesses. So obviously, like I said before, the less you get hit, the harder it is to proc. In some situations, it won't proc for a very long period of time, so Asylum Sanctorium. You have to block, get hit, and then bash to proc it, so it can be hard to micromanage it on one bar. It can be difficult for newer tanks to proc it if they're not really thinking too much into it, so you have to make sure you are doing those combination of things. You need to time your procs to get huge uptimes when combined with Nazare, so it can be hard if you're not the one using Nazare or something like that. If you're not using Nazare and you've got to time it with another person to get the uptime really high, that can be quite difficult to get that timing down. So you sometimes need to control when you get hit so you don't lose your uptime. So there are situations where you don't want to be hit. You don't want to have your turn in tide buff active and ready to proc because there's still a few seconds left on the vulnerability from before, and then it's not going to overlap very well. So you need to it does require a bit of thought process sometimes to get really, really high uptimes. So we're going to rate this gear set, and we're rating it on a criteria like this. And, okay, so ease of use. I'm giving this 3 out of 5 for ease of use. And now the reason that I'm giving it this is because it's not as easy as something like Yolnahkrin where you just taunt to proc it. And it's also not as easy as something like Wormcult where it's just automatically there. So it requires you to make sure that you're timing it, you're blocking, you're bashing, you've got to be hit. So there's like a little bit of a micromanagement aspect there, so it's not as easy as other gear sets. The ease to obtain, I'm giving it 5 out of 5 because Shipwrights Regret is a really fast dungeon if you don't do Vet. If you just run through on normal and you don't do the secret bosses, you can breeze through it in literally a couple of minutes. And you only need the body pieces to get this set running. Because when you combine it, let's say you're combining it with Yolnahkrin, it's actually better to use Yolnahkrin on the jewelry because you can make Yolnahkrin gold jewelry if you've already got Yolnahkrin in your collection system. When you recraft Yolnahkrin jewelry, it already comes in gold, so it doesn't cost you any materials. So it's a nice idea to have like your Yolnahkrin on your jewelry. This goes on your body pieces. That is how you would make the most out of it. So the usefulness to the tank, I've gone for 3 out of 5 because you do get some stat bonuses in there, but there are other gear sets that are going to provide more benefits to you as a tank. The 5-piece provides nothing to you specifically, but it is good in terms of the little stat bonuses. But there are other gear sets that provide a lot more, so this one has got a 3 out of 5. The usefulness to the group, 5 out of 5. Obviously, being able to get a 66% uptime of major vulnerability. Having major vulnerability available every single ad pull, obviously very, very strong. And when combined it with Nazare, you can get virtually 100% uptime on major vulnerability. So the usefulness to the group, 5 out of 5. Obviously with your Necros using other damage ults as well, meaning you should have an overall upturn in your group's DPS. So if we combine those scores and divide it by 4, that gives us a total score of 4 out of 5 for this gear set. If you haven't picked this up yet, definitely make sure you go and collect a set because it is an essential gear set. It's a very good gear set. This is a gear set you want to be using as a tank in all situations. So that is everything, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.